tell you what my father used to do when I was a kid, and he asked me to walk in our garden to do gardening, which I hated. He said, "You are an ambitious, lazy person. You are thinking hard how to do things easier."
Dadi, Perlmutter, thank you so much for joining me on my show. How are you?
I'm good, very well, working extremely efficiently from home.
Working extremely fit. You don't have to walk from meeting to meeting. You must be saving some time.
Yeah.
I love it. And you're
Well,
currently actually.
I'm walking more. It's not.
That's what I hear a lot. But and now I'm actually, I'm curious to see what will happen, as we move forward. The productivity increases, but whether we'll get some fatigue from this, I think it'll be a very interesting question. But Dadi, I'm not going to waste time talking about what's happening now because I have the honor and pleasure of speaking to you now. You spent over 30 years at Intel Corporation. Your last activity there was acting as Executive Vice President and Chief Product Officer of Intel Corporation. Dadi, just for my ears, how many people are at Intel, globally around, or at least when you were there?
About 100,000.
About 100,000 people. As Executive Vice President and CPO, I believe I saw somewhere that about 30,000 people were under your command.
35,000.
35,000. Dadi, I'm going to spend 20 minutes on a single question, but I actually have many more questions. But what is it like running 35,000 people as Executive Vice President of Intel?
It's very difficult, and I think you have to change your mind. That's why I can work from remote much easier, because you find out that you have, Andy Grove said something, when you manage something so complex so far, you have to influence people because you cannot talk to each person and change his mind. So you have to be much more into influencing, show example, be very precise and very concise about what you say and how you say. I added my Israeli officer that you have to be in the lines every once in a while to talk to people in the line to make sure that you know exactly what they are, because the problem is that you hear filtered information from your people, which is very important.
So I think that, it's such a rare opportunity to speak to somebody who's managed 35,000 people. I often ask entrepreneurs and founders about leadership and about, what is it like running a team of, 12, 13 people as you go through the trenches of a startup? What are the difficulties and the challenges of running 35,000 people? I mean, how do you lead a group of 35,000 people? Do they know you? Do they know who Dadi is? Are you just, this guy in the background making the decisions? How does it work?
Well, I manage also 5, 6 people teams, so I know the difference. It's a huge difference. When you manage 5, 6, 10 people, usually you're all together, and it's a startup. You mostly know many of the people for years, and you're good friends of them.
Right.
And it's very different when you run 35,000, across probably 4 continents or something like that. I learned something from that. Someone asked Mahatma Gandhi, how do you lead 400 million people? At that time, there have been only 400 million Indians. At the time, he said, I'm not leading them. I'm seeing where the people are running, and I'm just running in front of them. You come to realize that most of the people, other than people that work very closely with you, and with many of the people have been working for dozens of years, the people have the persona of you. They have the impression of who you are, which may not be, or probably not exactly who you are. Or, as I said, people have many personas. It's not that you are a schizophrenic or something like that, but you have many personas because, my kids see a different daddy than my wife is, and where my friends are, and my employees are. But at the end of the day, you're the same person. My leadership style that I'm open and direct. People know what I mean when I say they don't have to second guess me. Makes it easier for them to understand what I'm talking about. That's my view. You don't trick them. And you show by example.
Is it possible to be open and direct with 30,000 people?
Yes, because if you admit when you make mistakes, and well, if you do it every day, it's a problem.
Right.
I don't want to be led by an idiot that, you know, changes mind every day. But, you know, every once in a while you make a bad move, and, you know, human beings make bad decisions. I believe that a good leader is not the one that does not make a mistake, because all people are, is
Right.
where admit openly about the mistake, learn from the mistakes, and, you know, direct a new course of action, because not
I love
because
it.
you're idiots, you don't know what to do. You know, maybe you're idiots, but I'm also part of the team of idiots, and this is why I made a mistake. This is what happened. This is what I'm going to do next. And I have a big lecture about this one, but uh, my greatest achievement, you know, Intel Israel greatest achievement was based on a big failure that we learned from the mistake and applied. You know, the whole Intel notebook, you know, the Centrino program was based on a failed program that was codenamed Timna. And
Wow.
it was a big failure and a huge success.
And today it's a core part and part of all the
Yeah, yeah. Now it is the foundation of what became the core. But as a matter of fact, at that time, people only 50% people use notebooks. Today, you know, 90% of people buy notebooks when they use a personal computer.
I was having a wonderful conversation the other day with Gil Frostig, who you probably know from Intel as well, and he's a very good friend here from J Ventures, and we were talking about, you know, his endeavors with Wi-Fi chips and how, you know, that also came from not a mistake, but some you know, a consequence that he did not expect. But, you know, Dadi, I want to take you then back to you're at the Technion, you're studying electrical engineering, you're joining Intel. Eventually, you come to speak about how one of the great things about this cooperation between Intel and the Technion is that while they're both situated in very close proximity, but the best and the brightest from the Technion often go to work at Intel, and you know, you're creating something very special there within the startup nation. Take me back to those times. You join Intel. Do you have an aspiration to go and spend over 30 years at this great corporation and rise the ladder of success to be, you know, one of the executives? Is that intentional?
No, I came to Intel as a compromise because I really wanted to be an academic. I want to be a professor.
So you
And
settled for going on a career path
yeah,
for
but
executive.
you
I
know,
like that.
I was married very young. I basically was married when I studied in the Technion. I had
Wow.
my eldest son was already born. And when talking to my wife, I said, I want to go to do my master's and then PhD. She said, well, you know, we are in a bad financial situation. We have to get stable a little bit. And we decided that I'll go to work at Intel and continue my studies as an external student.
Wow.
And thought maybe 2, 3 years will get stabilized. I never finished my master's degree, and I spent 34 years at Intel. But every 3, 4 years was a completely different journey. So
And that doesn't stop you from now teaching thousands of teaching and inspiring thousands on the Coursera course that I came across. So I think that, you know, the master's degree will wait. Daddy, you know, I want to make sure we have enough time for this. So I want to do a transition now to the time after Intel. And one of the things that is very evident when you look at your background and the things that you're doing is that you're very passionate about social entrepreneurship, social innovation, both as the chairman of the board at Michelin, but also chairman of the board at Israel Innovation Authority, and I'm probably missing a bunch of others that I didn't mention here. What is this transition from an executive vice president at Intel to being the chairman of the board of these organizations, and what does that even mean, being the chairman of the board?
for me, it is very simple because it's the same thing. Basically, the one thing that eventually got me to stay at Intel because my dream was to to make things that change the world. That's my dream since I was a child. I thought I'll do it as an academic, then as an engineer, eventually as an executive in a big company. But there are other things to do other than computing. And
Right.
basically, computing and technology could be used for bad things in many cases, but also for good things.
Right.
And you know, I'm focusing on Israel, but most of these problems are worldwide issues. And basically, my wife and I decided that we devote big portion of our time and all of our philanthropic investment into social entrepreneurship, predominantly in education, closing social gaps, giving opportunities, and combining or making communities closer. So one of I'm a chairman also of a nonprofit that deals with bringing the Arab community in Israel into Israeli high tech. So
Wow.
it's all the same. People are different, but it's all about working with people with motivation to do great things.
So, inspire me a little with some of the things that you're deeply passionate about. Some things that, I as a young entrepreneur now here in Palo Alto or from Tel Aviv that I might not be exposed to on a day-to-day basis. These are issues that are very close to my heart as well, because, but all the way through high school and the military, I was also very active and very passionate at bringing together various communities. But I'd love to get your take, because now you're getting an exposure at this from an executive level as you're overseeing a lot of these organizations that are doing really amazing impact. So what are some of the things that I as a young entrepreneur can take with me and understand better about my society? And what is my potential role as a leader as I go into the high-tech industry, hopefully make positive impact, but I also have a social responsibility to bridge together communities and not be a bystander and let the same, circle of effect take place.
Unfortunately, the world is using for possibilities for you if you want to do things. We picked education because education at the end of the day is you could argue master's degree, yes, no, but this is, for most of the kids in the world, this is just, every child have a huge intelligence. I don't think, in the US, they have the saying that we could very much anticipate your success in school and in life based on the zip code. And the zip code is not as an indicator of how wealthy your parents are. Right. It has nothing to do with you, your intelligence, your abilities. So giving opportunities, if you want to change the world, one of the ways, which takes longer, is to give opportunities for kids in school. And it's amazing. One of the organizations that my wife and I are doing, they take schools in the wrong zip codes. And it's amazing how smart team of people with relatively small amount of money are able to make changes from a 20% success in academic successes into 80 and even 90% in 3-4 years. So it's
what is the changing factor? What changes from 20 to 80%?
It's a complex way, but it's a very systematic view of people that understand education, combined with people that come from the high-tech community. It sounds like an engineering. My wife is an educator. She was a principal of a special ed school. They go in with the right people, good pedagogy. They do a few things. First, the schoolmaster is the king. They are not doing the plans for him or her. The ownership is the schoolmaster. It's a big difference. In Israel, especially, the Ministry of Education tells the schoolmaster what he needs to do, or she.
Right.
It's she, so I'll use she from now on. They bring in a set of volunteers. They come from high-tech business, army, 8-1 and 8-2. They make miracles in helping kids to go study, the highest level of math and go to matriculation examinations. And they are same age, give or take. So it's not the 60 plus years old tell them what to do. It's their
friends who are a year older than them.
They need to do. It's a big influence. We bring what we call a mentor for the schoolmaster, someone from, we have an army lieutenant general is one of those. He sits there and the schoolmaster calls him and get help. And the pedagogic team comes in and do a deep analysis of the school, not just the pedagogic and academic successes, social situation, the level of the teachers, the teamwork between the schoolmaster and the teachers, the situation at home. Many of these kids grow at home that have one parent and not two. social economic issues, and they eventually, based on this data, and they have huge amount of information, and the schoolmaster always say, I've never seen such a deep analysis to understand the school that I'm running for 5-6 years. And, it's classical, basic engineering, call it that way.
Right.
And then they support the schoolmaster. We give them some money, not a huge amount, but you don't come as a consultant. You come in and say, I'll help you implement the plan you create.
So Dadi, well, this is remarkable and inspiring. I see a dissonance. On one hand, you're overseeing an operation of 35,000 people, chief product officer of Intel. You're running billions of dollars, right? In terms of both talent, but also in terms of products. So you're used to making decisions at scale, right? Like high level, like how do we go about the world? Now you're talking to me, how do we go into a single school and influence, kids that you can count on a piece of paper? And so is that intentional, or because you could be spending your time right now sitting on the boards of billion of unicorns that are dealing with billions of people, and you're choosing to spend your time and effort on this mentorship activity for specific people?
Well, the truth of the matter, one, I'm a chairman of 2 startups, and I'm also investors in a few others, so my day is full. My main job in
But Dadi, I just want to make sure, but when you go and you look and you look Dadi up online, the passion, what exudes is your philanthropic activities. It's not the investments and it's not the board. It's the volunteering work that you're doing.
I agree. And I'll tell you what, my main job in this nonprofit, my wife do this, she deals with 10 schools, so she's a big manager too. A big challenge, and one of the things that I work very closely with the CEO of the nonprofit, an impressive lady, is about scale. Because we are now dealing, when my wife and I joined, we dealt with about 7 or 8 schools. We're now dealing with 40.
Wow.
One of the big, looks insurmountable right now is how to influence the Ministry of Education to change their mind. Because at the end of the day, in Israel, there are about 800 to 1,000 schools like that. So,
wow.
So 40 schools, it's still a drop. But there's an old saying in Hebrew that the one who saves the life of one person is if he changes the life save the life of the whole world. So every kid matters. So it's not a small deal. It's more important than billions of dollars. I always told my wife that her job in saving kids' life, literally, in her school,
Amazing.
is bigger job than my billions of dollars. But you have to scale. Everything that I do with every nonprofit that I work with is about scale, not just the one person. Nevertheless, the one person is still extremely important.
Dadi, so much inspiration here. Before we leave, you've been an integral part of the startup nation and the foundation of the startup nation from its early days. What is the startup nation? What is this miracle of this tech innovation in Israel beyond Intel? You've seen it. You've lived it. Why is Israel a big tech hub?
Well, I'll tell you first. Israel is not startup nation. There is a nation within Israel called Startup Nation, which is about 9% of the people in the country. My job, talking just about education, is hopefully to turn the whole Israel to Startup Nation. Not mean that everybody works on the startup and inventing technology, but the world is becoming more based on technology, and people are not technology literate, are not going to be able to succeed in this world, and the Corona crisis even exemplified that even further. 20 years ago, I was interviewed in New Delhi. They wanted to turn India into the IT nation. And they talk about Intel, of course, and all that. And his last question was, Dadi, the same question you ask, what we in India need to do? And I said, what you're doing good in Israel. I said, that means you don't understand Israeli culture. If you ask me what's bad in Israel, I'll give you a 15 minutes lecture without even thinking. If you want to ask me what's good, give me 5 minutes to think. It's about the impatience, the wanting to do things better, wanting to do things differently, not being confined to the box.
Right.
And so, I said it's very short, but it's very easily the camaraderie on one hand, and the personal success on the other hand. So I've seen cultures that go either on camaraderie or the personal inspiration. And in Israel, it's something which is quite unique. And it's very difficult to explain, because how can you be driving your own personal success? Is it on the expense of the camaraderie? Never will be at the expense of the team, when in especially successful. That's one of the reasons for success.
I love it. When I always think about this question, first I obviously go back to my own military service, and I can't help but remember all the times where, I was leading a team of engineers. My commander would come in and say, Michael, here is the task. We need this software to be done next week. And I'm saying, but we need 3 times the people in order to get this done. And he's like, you'll figure out a way. I trust you. Come back next week. And obviously you figure out a way. But I also think back to Ben Gurion, and I don't know if it's a myth or if it's a real story, that we ran out of rice. And so he said, you figure out a way, and that's how we came to make Ptitim, my favorite food of all time.
I had a boss. He was Chinese, a very harsh person, and I came to ask him about. He give me about information about competition. At that time, it was digital. It was in the 90s, and he said, "What you asking me? You're Israelis. I'm sure you or one of you guys know someone in Boston that works with digital, and you know the information. Come back next month and tell me what you do."
I love it. Dadi, thank you so much for your time. I know you're so busy, so I really, really want to thank you. Before we leave, I need 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
I'll tell you what my father used to do when I was a kid, and he asked me to walk in our garden to do gardening, which I hated. He said, "You are an ambitious, lazy person. You are thinking hard how to do things easier."
I love it. Dadi, thank you very, very much. And stay safe and stay healthy. And really, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Have fun. Bye.